Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with not only a little bit of an update to the acquisition of Maximum Football, but in addition to that, since we know that Maximum Football is confirmed to be coming back, let's go ahead, let's get, the horse ahead of the cart, you know what I'm saying? Let's go ahead. Well, let me talk about some of the things that I would like to see improved or some new things added to the next Maximum Football game, whether that comes out later this year in some minor miracle, or more likely if it comes out in 2022. So with that being said, I hope you are ready for this episode, and if you happen to be ready, make sure you smash that like button for me. And if you happen to be brand new and you happen to enjoy college football content, whether it be on the NCAA games, whether it be with Maximum Football or professional football like Madden, encourage you to hit that subscribe button. But yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it, starting with the slight update to Maximum Football. So a couple of days ago, I did talk about how Maximum Football was acquired by Maximum Games, and there's a slight change to that necessarily. So Modus Games, who is one of the development arms for Maximum Football, or for Maximum Games, Modus Games is actually going to do the physical development. What Maximum Games does is they handle the physical distribution. So Maximum Games handles like the physical distribution, like you saw for Maximum Football in 2019 and 2020. But Modus Games will actually be the people that will be handling the actual development of the game, and they have more of a staff than what the folks of Canuck Play have. So I'm really excited to see what they can do. This, of course, was first reported by SGO, the folks over at Sports Gamers Online. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into my wish list for the next installment of Maximum Football. And I'm going to kind of break it down into 3 different categories. I want to talk about it, from a customization standpoint. I want to talk about it from the Dynasty standpoint, because that's the most important feature of a college football game. I think we could all agree on that, is the Dynasty Mode, for recruiting and all that good stuff. And then, of course, the gameplay. The gameplay, got to be good too. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into the first category that I want to go ahead and talk about, and that's customization. Now, I have talked about in the past that if there is the biggest strength for Maximum Football, it is their customization. I mean, for the American college football, for example, you can have 130 teams and you can customize all of them at the same time. That is something that is actually possible. But with that being said, still can be improved on, can still be tweaked a little bit to make it an even better experience for all of us, to allow us to have that deeper dive. So if you guys remember from NCAA 14, for example, there was the Team Builder website where you can go online and create your own custom school that way and be able to share it with other people. And now that we have the player likeness rules that are in place, that was confirmed by the Supreme Court in a 9-0 vote, which, by the way, that rarely happens, especially how divided we can be at times. But that's a story for another time. But that being said, I would like to see something similar to the Team Builder website, for Maximum Football, with a couple of exceptions. One exception being is, not everybody that plays the game, is able to afford access to like the online features. So, if you don't have Xbox Live or the PSN Live, I suppose, like for those of you that are on the PlayStation, then allow there to be an offline feature to go ahead and still create your team. The only difference is, since you're not online, you can't go about sharing it with other people or going about going to that same online feature and getting a created team, from that place either. So that's something that I would really like to see first and foremost, because we do have those player likeness laws in place. Players can profit off of their own name and likeness, and that's really important, in the discussion. That's part of the reason why, we're able to see a comeback for college football games, seeing that kind of feature come back. But now let's go ahead and get into the most important feature of this dynasty. Let's talk about just the Dynasty Mode, the Dynasty Mode for Maximum Football. First and foremost, we should get some conference alignment. Allow us to align conferences, on our own. In Maximum Football, it's not like the newer NCAA games before it was discontinued, where you had the option in the offseason to change the conferences up however you want, or in NCAA 06 where you couldn't even get like a invitation from the computer to join a bigger conference depending on what your performance happened to be like on the football field. So that being said, in Maximum Football 2020, if you guys remember, those conferences were locked in once you started a dynasty, right? Like, you could not change the conference alignment in any way, shape, or form. Not before the dynasty start, not while the dynasty is started. There was nowhere to change it. So that's one thing I really would like to see, especially given the big news that we did have that, Oklahoma and Texas are going to be joining the SEC in like 2025. So I would love to be able to, a few years down the line, be able to reflect that, get a couple of those bigger teams in, that SEC conference, or the Super South it was happened to be called, in Maximum Football. So that'll be something really nice I would really like to see going forward. In addition, and this is pertaining to the American college mode, maybe not necessarily the Canadian college mode, but I would also like to see an expanded prospect database. In Maximum Football 2020, there was 1,000 prospects that you can recruit from in any given year. That was between, the regular season and the off season, which it does sound like a lot, don't get me wrong, but you have to keep in mind that there is 130 teams, in the FBS as of the recording of this video. So if it was even divided out equally, we're talking about teams maybe getting around, on average, 9 to 10 prospects every year, when, there's teams obviously get more than that. We're talking about 20, 25 players, maybe 15 on the lower end. But, of course, college football isn't even, there's certainly some haves and have-nots. So in my ACSA dynasty, for example, if you guys remember, in the season 1 off season, I showed at least a Google Sheets spreadsheet that you can go and click onto, and like, there were some teams that were able to fill out their recruiting class completely, but there are also some teams that did not sign a single prospect throughout the season, and that was like the CPU, so it's a huge range. So I would love to see more players added to the prospect database so that doesn't happen, so that even those weaker schools, they're still able to at least sign some prospects, even though they may not necessarily be the most talented. Now, speaking of recruiting, I would also like to see a recruiting ranking screen. Now, the recruiting ranking screen, it straight up did not exist in Maximum Football 2020. For my ACSA Dynasty, for example, and you're seeing some of that gameplay on screen, I basically had to create my own recruiting rankings from scratch, with thankfully help with a couple of the moderators, that I had, supporting my channel and continue to support my channel. But there was no place to check, how good your recruiting class was compared to other, schools maybe in your conference or around the nation. There was no way to check that, and that's not a great look, whatsoever. Especially because you don't know how well you're doing recruiting. You can kind of the only thing you can kind of check regarding recruiting is if you meet your needs or not, which, for only 1,000 prospects for 130 schools, that can be a little tough to do. That would be something that I would certainly really like to see moving forward, is a recruiting ranking screen. And then on top of that, I would also like to see something for, the actual top 25. Now, there is a place in the stats tab in the Maximum Football Dynasty. There is a way for you to check to see, who's ranked number 1, who's ranked number 3, all the way down to 130 throughout the course of the season. But what I would like to see personally is a specialized screen just for the top 25, maybe show their record, how many points maybe they're getting, in the coaches poll, media poll, that kind of stuff. And as we get later into the season, what does the playoff committee, think of these teams? At the time of the video, there is currently a 14 playoff that is in place, but we might be expanding to a 12-team playoff, in the near future, depending on what the NCAA competition committee or whatever wants to end up doing. But that's something I would really like to see, is a screen for the top 25. So now the last thing that I wanted to go ahead and talk about is the gameplay. Gameplay is always important for every single video game, regardless of whether it's football, whether it's, a sports game in general, or if it's any other kind of game like a shooter, RPG, one of those things. So with that being said, a couple of things I would like to see for the gameplay. First and foremost, one thing that I've really noticed, playing my Maximum Football 2020 Dynasty recently, I just started a new series on the channel if you want to check that out, is the camera angle on punts. I would love to see a change to that in the next installment. So if you guys get a stop on defense, defense can be a little bit hard. It is for me. I'm like a Big 12 defense, right? So the camera angle on the punt, it shows more so the ball in the air and not necessarily your positioning of the player, or like where the other team's players are in relation to you. So it can be a little bit more difficult to make that decision between, whether you want to actually make a fair catch or whether you want to actually go ahead and try and go ahead and return this punt. So, I mean, it made me a little bit more conservative at how I go about punt returns. But if that camera angle was changed similar to how NCAA 14 shows its punts, and when that sequence of plays happens, that would be really helpful to the gamer in just knowing where people are. Kickoffs is not that big of a deal because, there's a lot more space to work with on kickoffs. The kicker is kicking it farther downfield than what a punter would usually do. But that being said, that's something that I would really like to see. And then the other thing that I would like to see tweaked in the next installment of Maximum Football is the passing mechanics. So the passing mechanics, it's a little bit more difficult to pass the football in, say, Maximum Football than there is in, Madden or in like any installment of the NCAA games. And that could be on the like the player models. I'm not a person that develops games themselves, so I don't know exactly like what to like point it towards, but some kind of tweak, particularly when you want to throw a pass. It seems like there is a delay between when you press the button and when that pass happens. Now that could be because they were working on other stuff. I'm not sure what was going on there, but if there's something like that where if you want to get rid of the football quickly, we're more likely to be able to go ahead and do so. But guys, that's really all I had on my Maximum Football wish list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you smash that like button. Hit subscribe if you happen to be brand new. Now, I am somebody that wanted to go ahead and put the things that I wanted to see in the next Maximum Football game here on the YouTube platform, and allowed to be a forum of discussion for what things that you would really like to see as well. I didn't want to go into graphics, but if graphics can improve, for given that we are in the PS5 Xbox Series X generation, that would be cool to see as well. But even though you may not have a YouTube channel that you constantly post videos on, that doesn't mean that you don't get a say. Maximum Football did put a link out, on Twitter. If you guys saw the first little picture that I, posted in this video, where you can go and, talk to them about what things you want to see in Maximum Football going forward. And it lets you know, based off of, like what, have you played Maximum Football before? Like your experiences playing Madden, your experiences playing NCAA. They want to hear from you. And say what you want about Maximum Football. One thing that I've always admired, whether it's Canuck play, and hopefully the folks over at Maximum Games continue to do this moving forward, is they listen to their community. They want to hear your feedback and want to try to make improvements based on what you're saying in that feedback. So I'm going to have that in a pinned comment down below so that you guys can check it out. If you haven't filled it out yet, I certainly have, to let them know what I'm feeling about the game. But yeah, man, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. What do you guys think? What improvements do you want to see? Let me know down in the comments. This is John J Gaming on the mic signing off, but I'm hoping you're all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.